Welcome to Graded Podcasts.
Jasmine Mansbridge is a professional practicing artist. She has taken her art to a few mediums like sculpture, large-scale public works and intimate paintings for private collection, and more recently film and animation. Whatever her choice of art form, Jasmine brings a refined and meticulous hand to the work. Her work provokes thought and wonder and gives the viewer the chance to apply their personal storytelling as they unpack the geometry and portals of Jasmine's imagined world. Welcome, Jasmine. Thank you for joining Graded Podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm interested in chatting to you about everything today.
Of course. Could you tell us a bit about your childhood and your environment growing up?
Yeah, so I actually had a pretty unconventional childhood. My dad was a teacher and a minister, and his focus was largely working with Indigenous communities in Australia. So from a pretty early age, my very earliest memories are being in Indigenous schools, and so because of that, we moved quite a lot. We were not in one place very often. My dad was always following the work and the opportunities. And when I was 14, we moved to the really remote part of Australia in Katherine, the Northern Territory, which is in the top end for anyone who's listening. So it's where, the Crocodile Dundee movie was literally filmed. And so from when I lived there from when I was 14 to when I was 26. So that really shaped a lot of my life, was those kind of experiences.
How did your environment influence your drive for success?
So my parents, I grew up without television and with a lot of music, and because of the religious aspect of, I grew up kind of in a bit of a bubble. I didn't go to conventional schools very often. It was always alternative. Looking back, there were really big advantages and disadvantages to that. The advantage was that I really, came to a very strong sense of my own self and my own identity and my own creativity and ideas that were largely very independent of the art world. I wasn't aware of the art world largely. And also a lot of exposure to Indigenous culture and ways of being and doing and making art. That was my primary exposure to art. It wasn't a westernized version. And so my drive for success came really purely as from a survival point of view. I had my first child when I was 18. I was married when I was 17, and that didn't work out, and my parents moved away. So I was really left in a really remote area with very minimal resources, but a really strong drive to change my circumstances, and I had to do that myself. So that is, that still is something I return to when times are difficult.
How would you describe your career progression?
Yeah, it's really the thing is I almost feel like career is, I know it's the word for it, but it's almost just, I would paint and make things regardless of it having a monetary attachment. But obviously the monetary aspect is very, very important, because without finances and without me being resourced, I can't be an artist. I've now got quite a few children and have a lot of, I can't just not have an income. And so the progression of my career has been very, very organic, very natural, very driven by serendipitous circumstances, being in the right place at the right time, but also, matching that with a lot of hard work. So if I've been given an opportunity, anytime I've worked really hard to bring my A game, as I call it, to that particular opportunity. And, I know I have a reputation with everyone who knows me that I will show up and get things done, regardless of sometimes really difficult circumstances. And, living remotely, for example, when I was young, I had no internet, so I'm like 25, no internet, living very remotely, shipping's expensive, everything was difficult. nothing was even remotely easy, compared to my life now, where I've got the internet, I've got, I'm in close proximity to the city, and I know I've built quite a huge network now of a creative community that I can work with. But back then I had nothing, and it was everything was self-directed, and I've also learned a lot about the art world. Like I've had to learn. I have had to work everything out myself as I go along. But in some ways, in some ways, the naivety was a gift, because if I'd had any awareness of what I was trying to do and what I was, where I was trying to place myself, often I feel like if I'd known what I was coming up against, and I'd known how difficult it was to create a career as an artist, I would never have tried. But being so naive and just, coming from this place of, oh, I'll just work hard and I'll do this, and, has led to where I am. And so the naivety has been a blessing, to be honest.
Did you ever worry that art may not be your main income?
So there have been times when I've had to have other jobs around being an artist, and being an artist has been my number one passion, but not my, I've had to get an income from. I've worked in schools. I've worked in I've worked quite diversely in paid employment, and it was 14 years ago actually, that I was like, okay, I'm in a position. I'd gone on maternity leave actually, and I knew I had this period of time to, that I was like make or break. If I don't ever want to go back into paid work again, and I know that I've got enough momentum behind me now to transition. I think that's a conversation so many people have, because they feel like, where's the tipping point where you go, because as soon as you're working full time and you have full time energy, and I mean, for me, it's always around raising children as well. So it's a very weird full time, but once you do commit to that full time, when you can, there is a lot of, then you can say yes to an opportunity, or you can follow things that you might, if you've got a paid employment, you've got to be here or there. And in my line of, the work I do, me being able to travel is really, and be, able to move quickly is very important. Of course, I still worry. Like, I don't know if any creative person I know, no matter what your level of success, you still have this, there's an element, but you just can't stay in that place of going, oh my God, like, what if this is the end? What if I've peaked? But you can't stay there. It doesn't serve you.
I know people whose parents aren't supportive of them becoming artists. How did your parents play a role in you becoming an artist, and were they supportive of it?
So my parents, because of their philosophical and religious approach to the world, had a very blasé / broad / almost negligent view of education, to be honest, because of the focus on spiritual achievement. And I come from a big family, and really we were left to our own devices quite a lot. And I've had to reconcile the difficulties of that, as in terms of educating myself later in life, and how much easier it would have been if I'd been educated from the start. But then also the lack of conventional thinking and the lack of conventional education have also opened many opportunities for me, because I'm a more of a outside the box problem solver and thinker, because of the way I was raised, and also questioning the current model of society was the norm for me. And so I'm still doing that. I'm always holding myself up against what feels right and true, or what is perceived to be right and true societally. Do you mean? So that's kind of, that's the balance, the juxtaposition, the two halves of the whole that you have to reconcile when you're in that situation.
You brought up education. How critical was the schooling system in making you successful?
It had nothing to do with anything in my life. I was a really avid reader, and I and that has come through now in my writing. I write quite a lot, and that's come from me reading very, I had no TV, as I said, so I read a lot of old literature, and my parents read, my mother used to read Dickens to us all the time, and all the old classics. So when I sat, there was, it's not like they weren't, my parents, there's a lot of highly intelligent and educated people who, I was exposed to a lot of, this kind of, stuff that I was really interested in. I love this, so I still avidly read, and there was one teacher that I had at one point in time. I went to a regular school, and this one particular teacher had just said that, your writing is, so got so much weight and creativity, and she taught me to write. She really took upon herself to teach me how to write an essay and to direct me into literature that was going to, really feed me and ignite something in me that made me want to do that. So I actually went back, later in life and started a Bachelor of English at university because of my love of language. So that's, so obviously there are, I think within the education system, there are many players, and there are people who are they're passionate educators who make huge difference to children's lives. And there's, this particular teacher was one of them, really made a difference. And it's such a varied experience. And I mean, I've got children, so I'm going through that with them. And both my children the older ones have university educations, because I was like, so wanting them to have a traditional education to fall back on and not have the gaps that I had growing up. So, yeah, I have a lot to say about education.
You mentioned reading. Are there any books that have inspired you that you can recommend to any teenagers?
I love Murakami, the Japanese writer, because my paintings are quite utopian, and they have a lot of, there's a lot of, almost fantasy, escapism, metaphor, imagined worlds, portals, parallel universes in his writing. So that he's a writer that I've come to in recent years that I've really, I really enjoy. Sometimes he's kind of like, what do you call? It's a bit of a, sometimes he goes into really uncomfortable territory sometimes with his subject matter. But he's, that's an author that I always tell people that they should be aware of. And that one of the particular ones that I love is, this always happens to me. Anyway, I'll give it to you for the show notes, but there's one that is an excellent one to start off with. And it's about an artist who discovers these portals. So, but I mean, I think reading, or at least, I think actually because I listen to a lot of books while I'm painting, it's a different way of consuming literature, but it's a convenient way for me. And I think particularly the works of Dickens or the old English authors. Dickens is wonderful because he's dealing with so many, real, like it's historical and it's, this really, but I think listening with Audible can be a really great way to kind of go into those books, because when you're reading the language, the old language can be like hard to digest, because it's kind of, it can be really clumsy and slow to read that if you're not familiar with the flow of the language. But I think it's really important to read, because this is how we spoke 100 years ago. This is how we articulated things. So, yeah, I can't get away from, and obviously there's all the, whenever, the sentimental relationship with particular books. 100 Years of Solitude is a fantastic book. That, it's a classic. There's many books that I could do a podcast on books.
The running theme throughout the podcast is learning about successful individuals' journeys like yourselves. How do you define success?
I have spoken about this many, many times, and because I'm so, I have 5 children, and so I've always been balancing, my career goals and my personal goals with also, raising children who don't need therapy for the next 50 years, or do you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with therapy, but but do you know what I mean? Like, so raising my children well as well. And so my version of success has had to tailor, be modified continually, because sometimes there's things that I want to do that would be fantastic for my career, but they're just not in that point in time doable. And for me, I'm always looking at the very big picture is a really great way to approach success. And I think, in terms of monetary success over I love my life success, there's a huge divide, because you can have monetary or, I feel like as a society, we are becoming more and more aware of the damages of consumerism and the impact of a particular kind of success. And for me, success is so holistic. And, to be like, so in the last couple of years, I've had a lot of people pass away that are really important to me. My ex-husband and my father-in-law, and, literally in this short amount of time. And so that really makes very poignant and very clear to me that if you're not living your life really in accordance to your soul intention and your passion, what can you do to adjust that? Because you might have the biggest house on the street and the best car and everything, and you work, 12 hours a day in a job you don't really care about, just to have the things that you don't really care about. So would you be happier to downsize to an average house, an average place, and then, write the books that you want to write, or go, swim in the ocean every single day? Or so for me, success really is this very serious balance of quality of life, matched with, whatever you're passionate about, what you were put on this planet for, and then matched with completely disregarding what people are going to think of you, because it's the status quo that largely keeps people living other people's versions of success. So like your parents wanted you to do this, and it's just your body does all these, you go through these motions, but in your heart, that it's not a good fit for you. And it can take, it can take a while. And I think for me, in some ways, I was really fortunate to have my life really disrupted by, and I love my daughter so much, and she knows this, and she's, actually the most amazing person, and has, one of my very good friends, actually, she is, she's 26 next week, and so for her coming into my life, really seriously disrupting all the I wanted to do architecture and do this and travel. And then when I had her, that's when I started painting because I was, living remotely. I had no car, I had, very little money, if no money. And I had very few resources, but what I did have, I had time. And I remember just going to the local, this is remote area news agency, and buying these art books and watercolors. And, literally my painting started on this small scale, but it very quickly, and I'd always been painting, but because before I had my daughter, I was busy doing what teenagers do, seeing friends and socializing. And I never had the time to just sit down and go, all right, I'm going to paint this, or I'm going to read this book. And so my life very quickly became, I had an adult life very quickly. It's like, okay, what am I going to do now? What can I do? And I think this is a phrase that I often revisit. It's like, what can I do with what I have right now? Like, it's okay to have these huge dreams and huge goals, but sometimes they feel so far away that you are too discouraged. And it's like, and especially now with the internet, you really have, and this is almost its own problem. You have an overwhelming amount of opportunities, So if you decide you want to do something, if you want to go teach Spanish and ski in the local village every day, or, learn Japanese, and, if that's what you really want to do, you can start learning Japanese today. on your, you know what I mean? Like you can just start towards whatever goal or dream or vision you have pretty much instantly these days. You don't have to, you really can. And so it's a matter of like just doing the things that light you up and make you happy, and then making a career out of that, because you can make a career out of almost anything now. You really can.
Your journey is extremely interesting because you had a daughter so young. When did your build up to success actually begin? When did you become aware of your starting point?
See, and that's the thing. I've always been like out, look, you know, and I still do it now. I can observe myself externally, and I think it's really important to be able to do that. And I've always been able to go, okay, this is the reality of the situation. But then, you know, where is, you know, and you know, adversity, I mean, often the greatest adversities are where your greatest opportunities lie, right? And when your back's up against the wall, that's when you are the most creative. And it doesn't feel good. It feels horrible. No one want, like, we all want an easy ride. Like, I just want life to be easy. I just want life to be easy, but that is just not how it's been for me. And when I think of, and now, you know, I have a philosophy of it. I'm really aware when difficult things are happening that it's okay. This is actually, there's, out of this adversity, I'm really aware from like that there will be a way through, and I trust that there's a way through. And I think, so, I mean, you're talking about success. I guess the success for me really is that this is my full-time job, that I make quite a good, you know, it's very variable, but I can support myself, and I can make, you know, I make sculptures, and I can continue to expand what I do with the income that I have purely from painting. And that, for me, that's success. Like, and whether at any point I have to tailor down some things, or, you know, like the creative career, you've got to be creative about a creative career, and you've got to be out, you know, for me, it's this combination of like working hard and being available and looking for opportunities, but then also switching off and just trusting that things will come to you. You know, and I'm at that, you know, the 10,000 hours. They say it takes more than, you know, 10,000 hours to have your craft nailed. And, you know, and I know, see, I'm at that point where I have my language. I know what's going to work. I know how to do my paintings. I know what I'm painting. I know what I'm talking about. And so when you get to that point, it's like, this is great, because then you can start building layers to that. But I mean, in your early creative career, you don't know that. And you've got to just keep painting or keep working and keep making stuff. You know, it's like you keep, and then it's like I guess a snowball going down a hill. It's gathering layers and layers and layers and layers and layers, but you only ever start with like a grain of sand, you know, and that's all anyone gets. You don't get, you know, very rarely do people get the magic thing very young or very early. It's almost always, and sometimes people who do get it too young, they lose it because they don't know how to continue to cultivate. It's like they won the lottery and then it's gone. They don't know how to, you know, I know how to create things that I want to create. There's like a recipe. So, yeah, you know, I have a lot to say about it.
And what's the next step in your journey?
So this year, I guess, I mean, what the next step in my journey is always taking my work to bigger audiences. That's always the next step. And so one of the things that I've started doing, and I've made my first film, a short film. And in the films, I can include many elements that are in my paintings, in my sculptures, and, you know, the philosophy behind my work, you know, what the work is about. I can make film and it can go anywhere. It can be experienced by anyone. So I'm very interested in making art that people don't have to pay for, or there's no transaction of money. So, you know, the sculptures that I make, they're for people just to have an experience with. It's like, you know, and to appreciate and to feel, you know, connected to my work and my ideas. And there's no transaction, I mean, people can buy them, and people sometimes do, but, you know, so that the same way when you go to a museum or you go to a large gallery, when you go and the work's not for sale, you're just going to experience the work. So I'm very interested in providing experiences. And this year I'm traveling to Korea. I've got a residency in France. There's quite a few, different opportunities. I've got, there's always this balance between lining up opportunities and seeking new opportunities and balancing the workload and the opportunities coming to me. It's a lot, you've got to, someone said to me, I think when I was like 20, they were like, you only have a creative career if you can't do anything else. Like it is like, in the last film that I made, it's got prose over it because I write a lot, and the prose is just like, this little fire that burns in me that I can't put it out. Like, why me? Because it is also, it's like when you're like this and you have this drive and this creative energy, it's something you've also got to manage successfully so it doesn't burn you out, and so that you can have, a quote unquote normal life as well, like so you can enjoy other things, because it can take over, and then it can actually make you unhealthy because you don't eat properly or sleep properly, or so you've got to manage your energy as well. But yeah, that's so that coming up next is more of building on the existing, that snowballing, building on the existing opportunities and body of work and layering it, and hopefully more people being able to experience the work, more opportunities. That'll be the trajectory of the I can't imagine my life. That's just going to be me for the next 40 years, 50 years. You don't retire from this.
Your art is very colorful, geometric, and interesting, and beautiful for that matter. I know you probably heard that a lot, but how would you compare your art today to when you started?
So my work's always been like quite controlled. I've always like, I've done lots of different kind of styles, but the main thread or element that's continued to run through it is the storytelling, the narrative. There's always there's always a story that I'm telling in a work, and it's always been colorful. I've always been really interested in color and contrast. And the other thing is, just this, this need to define things and keep things separate. And when I was young, I won this, prize, and ironically, it was for a Korean World Children's Art Prize that someone entered my work in, and it was a giraffe. But I remember every single, like, it was the most, when I think of the giraffe that I did, it was so abstract. That my interest in doing the giraffe was purely because of the patterning on the giraffe. I really didn't care about giraffes, but all the patterning was all broken up. And I remember it took me days and days to do the work. So the time also, like, I've always done work that is, like meditative and time consuming, and requires this like engagement with it. I've never been, I've always had to control surfaces. But yeah, my work has definitely evolved over time and will continue to evolve. That's the thing, like, it's evolving all the time, but slowly.
How is art important to society?
Okay, this is I've been having this conversation a lot because, and to use this as an example, which I just gave something the other day, like, you don't listen to Taylor Swift, for example, and you don't think about Taylor Swift's life. You think about your life. You relate whatever experiences you're listening to. It's you. You're in the picture. And so art is so important because it connects. So when I write a poem or when I do a painting, and that's why there is not people in my works, so people can put themselves in there largely. And, you can, the work, and a lot of my work is semi-abstract, really. And so, but there'll be emotion in the work that you connect to. It makes you feel something. The colors make you feel something, something sentimental, or, some emotion that you haven't connected with. And the sculptures make you feel, joy or make you feel meditative and give you an opportunity to be outside your usual range of feelings. So, I mean, art is so important because of the storytelling aspect, the connection, the ability for, any art, any good art or bad art, because, bad art can make you connect with a part of yourself too that you were unaware of. It can irritate you. Or so all art, all viewing of art is teaching you something about yourself. And I think that just that concept of thinking about that or understanding that when you go to, say, a museum and you think, what in me, what about me? Why am I triggered by this work? Or why does this work make me feel like I'm getting a hug? Or why does this work make me feel sad? And obviously the full gamut of human experiences mean different works. People respond to different works in different ways, and that's the reason why there's people who love my work and support my work and really get it, and there's people who it doesn't really affect much at all. That's because of the art of seeing, you bring your whole life experience to any particular moment. And so, I mean, art is so important, unfortunately, because of because of our society. The last say 100 years has had a focus on capitalism and a focus on production and a focus on growth and a focus on all of these things as society. Art, and this is, for most people, it took me years to actually get to this point where I'm here today and I can justify my whole Saturday, and then I can justify most days of the week painting because it has an income attached to it. But if this was just purely my hobby, it's really hard for me to justify, to say, hey, everyone, you got to look after yourselves, or I've got to get babysitters and do all this stuff because I'm painting and it's a hobby. And that's that links into another fundamental problem and shift that I hope this current world that I feel like we are changing as a society, and we are shifting our values, that we can't continue to just value ourselves only and measure our success and measuring just in these capitalistic and commercial kind of ways, because that means we don't value art and we don't value experiences and we don't value our health, our mental health, like we should. We just value our production. So, that question loops back around, to that.
How would you describe the connectivity between your life and your art?
I can't separate myself from my work anymore. I've written a few times about this, about it gets to the point where all my thoughts are thinking in terms of work, like my cognitive function. I'm always looking at any situation as to how can I tell this as a story? Like, where could I make this fit? And identity-wise, it becomes such a big part of your identity. And it doesn't mean that, if all of a sudden I couldn't paint. That's the thing, like being a multidisciplinary artist, I'm always thinking of the best way to convey something. It really comes to a point where, there's not a lot of separation between myself as an artist and the work, and it just intrinsically becomes like your language. And I think the point that it does become like a language for you, and other people start getting that language. And with me, I've got the thought catchers, and I've got 3-point portals, and I've got dream gazebos, and all these different things that have metaphor and meaning. And the more someone starts to get into that, and the more people understand that, it's really hard for me to not also, I'm thinking like that, to create work. That's also how I'm thinking. It's not like it's not like I have a day and I go in, I'm like, okay, now I'm thinking. I guess it's like being, someone with dual language, or, it's just always ticking in the back of my mind. And that's how ideas come to me. I don't I'll just be doing something, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, okay, I just need to quickly do something because I now have solved this particular problem. The idea has just come, and it's the trust that the ideas just continue to come, which they do.
And what are some of the biggest sacrifices you've made to achieve your success?
It's also like my primary relationship, my relationship with the work and making the work and what I'm doing with the work, other than my children, who are also part of that picture almost as well. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way, but my children are, for me as a person, I can't, my well-being is very linked to their well-being, and if they're not okay, then I'm not okay, and then that affects everything anyway. So but yeah, the sacrifices I make. Today it's a really hot day, and if I wasn't a painter, it's a Saturday, I'd be at the beach. Many nights I don't go out with friends, or I don't, I won't really drink because I've got to be up early because I need to be somewhere. The work, really, and the work, takes up most of my actual physical time as well. So when someone buys a painting, they're buying a lot of my time and energy. And I think, paintings are an exchange, or art is an exchange of energy. And it's often a big lot of my energy on my life that I could have been doing something else. But that's like when I said to you, that's just the way it is. That's just the deal. And I'm okay with it. I love it too. Like I love it, like, very much. So I often say, I look after the work, and the work looks after me. It's like a symbiotic relationship. It's like the work is my life. It looks after me, but I have to create the work and look after it. It's more like you get to this point. It's more like I'm the shepherder of all these ideas. I've got this whole body of work that I need to kind of look after and take it in whatever direction feels like the direction that it needs to go.
I completely understand that not seeing your children is obviously not great, and I don't think it's egotistical at all. How do you stay motivated?
I don't. I just love it. Like, it's my passion. I think when something's your passion, you don't need to worry too much about motivation. And it's like, every single painting, it's like the challenge of drawing up, the challenge of getting it right, and the challenge of getting it finished. It's like every single painting, I'm solving problems. Like, I don't just, like, every single piece of work, every sculpture, every single piece of whatever I'm making is me solving problems, like solving and making decisions about where it's going to go and what cut. So it's very addictive almost, like it is actually an addictive kind of process, but but yeah, I don't have to be motivated because I love it. I think when people are struggling, the times that I struggle with motivation will only purely be because physically I'm far too tired and I haven't been sleeping properly. Or I'm not well. Like, they're the only two times but I'll just work anyway. And once I'm it's like as soon as I've got the momentum of work, the motivation comes. So I don't have to worry. Like, it's like for me, for example, my website really needs updating. I've got to write some stuff, and then there's a lot of, and I sometimes have people come and help me do that, but I haven't got anyone right now. And it's like trying to find the motivation to do that. And it's they're only like a couple of like half an hour jobs is really difficult for me. But trying to find the motivation to go and paint is no problem. It's like trying to get motivated to clean your bedroom. It's like, whatever. But, so motivation is directly linked to passion. So if you're coming to a point in your life, and I don't mean, there are times where I couldn't be bothered painting, and I know I'm not talking about, if you've got a big goal and you're doing really difficult stuff to get there, you don't question your motivation levels, but if in the day-to-day constant, if in your life you are lacking motivation over a long period of time, you really have to examine why, and make sure that you haven't left apart, like you haven't gone in the wrong direction. You need to really reroute or think about why is this particular thing so hard for me? And if it's, if you're doing 12 subjects and just one subject you hate and you have to get it done, well, you just do it, But if it's your in terms of a young person, if it's your main career trajectory and you're not motivated ever and you hate it and you feel depressed, you really got to rethink that. And like, my life experiences is this, right? You either listen to your intuition and you make calls early, or you suffer and you suffer and you suffer and you suffer, and then you make the same call after a lot of suffering. So, if you can make calls early, you can avoid, and that's in relationships, in study, in lots of things. If you can make the call when you have a pretty good idea that things aren't going to work out or they're right, you save yourself long term.
I can imagine worrying about art might be quite stressful. How do you handle stress and pressure?
So I am pretty fit, and a priority of mine is to exercise. So when I can, I run or walk or climb. There's a mountain I climb, that really helps. If I don't do that, like if I'm so busy working that I neglect physicality, I will feel, what's wrong with me? I also meditate, which is, I've only started doing that since COVID, because I used to be like, I can't keep my brain still for 5 minutes. Like, that's just a waste of my time. I'm too busy. But I've learned, just that ability to shut off for now I can do it for 20 minutes, half an hour. I used to only do it for like 5. That ability to switch off that particular part of my nervous system and just give it a rest. Then I come back and I did a meditation before I did this with you, because I've had a couple of big days painting. I was like feeling tired. It's like that small opportunity to rest your brain, rest everything. Really, you reap dividends in productivity and in clarity from meditating. And there's lots of ways to meditate. I think that's one thing I've learned. A meditation can actually be a power nap. Set your alarm for 20 minutes and just lie there and refuse to think about anything, and power nap. Really powerful, rather than go and have a Red Bull or a coffee or something, just to continually keep you in this go, go, go mode. For me, so I don't drink coffee as a rule either, for the same reason, because I tend to, it tends to not serve me. But yeah, that's how I deal with stress. And also it's the dealing with stress, because stress is actually so counterproductive, and it's, proven to be so detrimental to your health, that for me, if I'm stressing, I'm like, so if I'm stressing, right, and this is my beloved career, my beloved thing, and it's causing me so much stress, well, why am I even doing it? What part, like, where do I need to adapt and change? Like, have I taken on too much? Like, where can I cut some things, like, realistically? Can I just trim off some things? Can I do 10 works for this show instead of 16, or whatever? Stress is sometimes an indicator also that you've taken on too much. So you do have to, like, look at, have a realistic approach too to sometimes, I'm a person, I tend to overcommit. I tend to want to, and I don't so much anymore, but want to please people or want to prove myself, and so sometimes literally just going, actually, I'm stressed for a reason. It's because it's unachievable what I've set out to do. So of course I'm going to be stressed. So that's just a really simple way of dealing with stress. And you only get one life, and you don't always get to know how long it's going to be. So it's like, actually, if I've got no quality of life, what am I even here for? What am I even doing it for?
I also meditate, but I find it helps with my concentration. What type of meditation do you do?
I do a variety of ones, literally ones that I've downloaded on my phone. But then there's also some pieces of music that I'm a big fan of Mozart, big fan of this, and there's some contemporary, is it Bonobo? I don't know how to say his name, but there's some contemporary, like, music with it, just pure, compositions, and I'll just put that on repeat, and just, that'll be my meditation. But sometimes if I need more, I need some, I'll do like a guided meditation. There's just, depending on where I'm at, really, I don't have, and I think the whole thing with meditation can be kind of intimidating, because you think there's a certain thing that you have to do, but it's actually just switching off and returning your brain back to, no, we're not dealing with this right now. No, you can think about that in half an hour. You're not dealing with this problem right now. And it just gives your whole system an opportunity to recalibrate, basically. And the breathing, I've done breath work training as well. And I do ice water swimming. Wim Hof, I'm a big fan of. So I've done a lot of that training, and also so just the rolling breath when you're feeling stressed, because you can be holding your breath and not breathing when you're stressed, and also it's like, oh, I just need to breathe and relax, and and it's quite effective. Just little things. I mean, I didn't have those tools years ago, and I ended up getting like adrenal fatigue and burning out, and doesn't feel very good. So I look after my health a lot more these days as a priority, like not thinking that I should be, it's okay to put my body and myself under a bus just to meet a external commitment, which is easy to do when you're trying to carve out your own path.
I'm going to change the topic. What has been your lowest point, and how did you get from there to where you are now?
I've had a few low points. I mean, I've been married twice and that hasn't worked. So there's been major life changes and financial changes and and times when I tell you, low point is I've had a number of exhibitions, and some sell out, and then but I have had an exhibition where I haven't sold a thing, and it's like where do I, like, is my work no good? Like, I've now got no money. How am I going to get myself out of this? I think the low point, if you're the low point with being a creative is not having enough separation from your work to take it really personally. And the only way to overcome that is just to do more work. And to not, like, for me, nowadays, I don't attach too much to the particular outcome of a particular project. Like, so it doesn't affect me so much anymore. And also because of the volume of work and commitments and projects helps me worry about the particular success of one thing. But I've had some serious low points. And as I said to you earlier in the interview, I've lost a number, and I've lost a number of people in the last 2 years. I've had to deal with a lot of grief and a lot of death. And if anyone is dealing with grief and at a particular point in their journey, the one thing that's really helped me is to go, because the emotions of grief can, really derail your ability to work and concentrate and focus. And obviously you can just be so upset. And it's, the one strategy that I've had that's been really successful is to go, okay, you've got an hour to just be super emotional and feel everything you want to feel. And then, okay, you know what? And then I'm going to be back in my body and focus back on my work. And that's been really helpful for me to not just be like, let myself just be this emotional mess all the time, but go, this is a real thing that's happened. You need to really feel these feelings. You can't ignore them. And to feel everything and have a cry or whatever you want to do. And then go, okay, now I need to work because I am still here and I've got a problem solve, and I need to, without my work, and if I lose my work, then I'm really in trouble. I can't let my grief or my depression or my sadness derail me. And obviously I've seen therapists, I've seen a psychologist, and that's the thing, like, and I've got great friends. I've got people that I can rely on, I can talk to. And I've got my work. My work in itself is very meditative, and it's a form of therapy just by itself. My work is something that I can do, and I can think, and I can, sort through my feelings. So I think, I said to you before that if you can, like, your greatest fear or the worst thing that could happen to you, in that often lies a key to what you maybe should be doing or where you should be. Because if your worst fear, if you write down a list, this is very helpful. If you write down a list of the worst thing that could happen to you, it's often not that bad. And as someone who's gone through a lot of life experiences and a lot of things that you would be afraid of happening to you, it's like, actually, when that fear is broken down and that you go through that thing, tiny processes, day by day, the worst thing that you go through is actually not as bad as you make it out to be. And that, particularly when you're young, if you're young and you're intelligent, or if you're young and, anytime when there's life, there's hope, like, and you can change your friend group, you can change your peers, you can you can level up. You can say, actually, where I'm right now, these friends, these people, I cannot achieve my goals or dreams in this present situation. And because in the long term of life, you can just go, actually, I want to be this person. So I want to be in that, friends with those people who are going places. Like, and you might lose friends. You might lose people's support. You're not always going to have, no one is going to actually know the dream that's in your head like you. And you can't, it's almost wrong to expect other people to be excited about the things that light your fire, or, and then you go get in that group with the people that are going to the place you go, and there's like momentum. You get in the same stream, get in the same boat, go in the same direction, and it just makes your life much easier. So, if you're in a really hard place, sometimes that's, you don't look in the mirror and look at your life when life is cruisy. It's in the hard times and the adversity that, and I'm going through I've got some other stuff going on at the moment. It's like really difficult stuff. And it's like, I know from my life experience that it's in this difficult stuff that you're forced to reroute sometimes, and it's actually lines up true to where you should be, or so don't be afraid of like, I think if you're not afraid of things going wrong, and you're not afraid of adversity, and you're not afraid of losing everything, therein lies your power. Like, especially when you're young. Like, when you're young, you should not be afraid of that, because time is on your side. And you don't realize it until you're later down the track, how much power you actually have when you're young, and how mobile you are.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, unfortunately, running out of time here, so I'm going to ask you one more question. If you could go back and say one thing to your 16-year-old self, what would it be?
What I just said to you now, that you have no idea of the power of who you are, that you are so empowered, that you're, beautiful, you're empowered, you're smart, you feel like you've got nothing, but you can create anything you want to create if you break it down, and you look at what you can do right now with what you have. Like, how can you add value to your current life? So instead of watching television, which I didn't watch television, like, instead, if you want to, learn a language every night for half an hour instead of staring at Instagram, or, just use your time wisely, because what you do now, or what you do when you're 16, has a huge impact on the person you're going to be when you're 40. So use it well, and don't worry about what other people are doing. Like, don't worry about the noise. The likelihood is the people when you're 16 that you hang around with, 99% of those people are likely not to be in your life in 5, 6, 10 years. So don't worry about what your peers are doing. Literally, just don't worry about them. Obviously you need friends and you need community, but your community might be people who are in their 30s. Like, they might not be, if you're a really driven and ambitious young person, you're likely to need to, a lot of my friends are a lot older than me, because I had a baby when I was young. It's like, I'm not living the typical teenage life. I either hang around with other teenage parents who don't want the same things I want, or I just go up, 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 up. So, and that's why I was really looking forward to speaking to you, because I think, I think anyone who's young and has a seed of ambition, you just need to, like, protect that too. You don't have to tell everyone what you want to do. Just, and just don't worry about it. Just let the noise. So, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do.
Thank you so much for joining me, and you've definitely inspired me along with many other teenagers across the world. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Cool.
Excellent.
Bye.